I'll call this meeting of the Camarillo City Council to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Kildee.
Here.
Councilmember Santangelo.
Here.
Councilmember Tremblay. Here. Vice Mayor Molche.
Present.
Mayor Craven.
Here. We're meeting at 4:30 because we have a closed session, and I will ask the attorney to give the reasons under which we can go into closed session.
Yes, we have two closed sessions this afternoon. The first one is a conference with real property negotiator. The authority is Government Code Section 54956.8. The property address is 2800 Berry Street. The agency negotiators are listed in the agenda. The negotiating parties include the Area Housing Authority of the County of Ventura and many mansions. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment. Our second closed session is a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. Number of potential cases is 1.
Okay, I do need to announce that I will not be able to be in the closed session regarding Berry Street because I have a financial conflict of interest with the Area Housing Authority. My husband and I have rental units that are rented under Section 8 program.
And we should ask if there's public comment. I realize there's no public, but
Oh, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak to us on either of these closed session items? Seeing no one come forward, the council is now recessed to closed session.
like to call this meeting of the Camarillo Board of Library Trustees to order. Let the record reflect that all trustees are present. And Mr. Mulchay, will you lead us in the flag salute?
Pleasure. Everyone, please.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda? No. Are there any public comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. That passes unanimously. And then we'll move on to oral communications. Do we have a report today, staff report?
Yes, we do. We do have Mandy Nazar in the audience today to give us a brief report on the ongoings at the library.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and staff. Last Saturday, we had a fantastic turnout for a One City, One Book event with best-selling author Kate Quinn as she discussed her latest novel, The Rose Code. We welcomed 89 people in our library community room for the event, and I want to express my gratitude to Vice Mayor Sean Mulchay, who gave a wonderful introduction to the author, and to our incredible friends group who financially support this program year after year. Camarillo Public Library is honoring Hispanic Heritage Month by offering a virtual children's book talk with local author and educator Dr. Kathleen Contreras. She'll be discussing her bilingual book, Braids Trencitas, on October 2nd. October is also Family History Month, and the library is commemorating with programs that reflect on family histories and identities, with a special scrapbooking program for adults and take-home family activities that focus on genealogy. You can sign up for these programs on our online event calendar or stop by any library service desk. So recently, we submitted our City of Camarillo Public Library annual report, and I want to share some of our highlights from last fiscal year, July 2020 to June 2021. As you are aware, this was not a typical year for us. Library staff had to think of new and creative ways to engage with patrons when our doors were closed to the public. Curbside service was our primary method of circulating materials. Between July 1st, 2020 to April 24th, 2021, our library circulated 85,025 items and facilitated 30,397 pickups. Patrons were thrilled that they could pick up their library books and materials in a safe way, with many patrons calling this the best thing ever. And if patrons wanted something instantly, they were able to check out our electronic resources where they could check out an ebook or an e-audiobook through platforms like Libby Overdrive and Hoopla. So to give you an idea of how much our electronic resources shot up, in fiscal year 2019 to 2020, our electronic materials checkout was 92,095. In fiscal year 2020-2021, it was 124,633, which is a difference of 32,538. So we are continuing to expand our electronic resource collection to meet this popular demand. And when we couldn't offer in-person programming, we focused on virtual engagement. Our Russell Fisher Business Collection Coordinator hosted a variety of online business programming and workshops to support local business recovery, and our Adult Literacy Coordinator continued to engage adult learners with online meetings and discussions. But while curbside was successful, nothing can compare to the joy when we were able to reopen our doors to the public on April 27, 2021. In May, we averaged 457 visits a day, and that jumped up to an average of 543 daily visits in June. So in those 2 short months, from April to June, we circulated 67,752 items. I am grateful to city leadership, staff, and our amazing community for their dedication and their support of the library in what was a very challenging year. And I look forward to the next chapter. So that concludes my presentation on the Camarillo Public Library Annual Report, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you so much. Trustees have any questions, comments?
I think the library exemplifies flexibility.
Thank you, yes.
I was going to say something similar, but you guys have pivoted multiple times in the last 18 months, and it's, the library is just so beloved in our community, and so we appreciate all of the efforts for the staff and everybody for being, as the mayor said, so flexible.
Thank you, we appreciate you.
There's one other announcement that I'd like to make, and that is that our library cafe is open. It opened a little over a week ago, and so we're happy to see that. The hours are Tuesday through Friday, they open at 10 and till 5. So those are the hours, 10 to 5. And so, yes, we're very happy to see that they're open. It's a bit of a limited opening, but it's open nonetheless, and so we're happy to see that.
That's great news. I know a lot of people have asked, so that'll be welcome news for the community. Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order of the Camario Sanitary District. Let the record reflect that all directors are present. Are there any amendments to the agenda? None heard. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, time to move on to the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
Move the approval.
All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Craven and a second by Mr. Kildee with respect to the consent calendar. Please vote. That item's adopted on a 5-0 vote. I'll go ahead and recess to 7 p.m. for our public hearing item.
And I will call the Camarillo City Council back to order and ask that the record reflect that all council members are present. Are there any amendments to this agenda? I'll take that as a no. Presentation, the top 10 community awards by the West Ventura County Business Alliance. Do we have someone or people who would like to talk to us? I understand you'd like to start talking down here, and then we'll go up there for the announcements?
Wonderful,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Okay,
Dear Honorable Mayor Craven and
just
Council.
pull the mic up to your mouth, and that way, as each of you speak, and that way we'll be able to hear you through the masks. It's a little difficult sometimes.
Thank you, yes, masking has been a challenge. So, dear Honorable Mayor Craven and council members, my name is Craig Jeffrey. I'm the Director of Human Resources for St. John's Regional Medical Center and St. John's Hospital, Camarillo. I also have the honor of serving on the West Ventura County Business Alliance Top 10 Awards Committee and as an executive member of the Board of Directors.
Good evening, Mayor Craven and council members. My name is Irene Nishinaga. I'm a local independent agent representing AFLAC. I also serve on the Top 10 committee for the Community Awards.
For the past 53 years, the West Ventura County Business Alliance, formerly the Camarillo Chamber of Commerce, has hosted the Top 10 Community Awards, the premier recognition event for exceptional women, men, and organizations that make a difference in our community. We are here today to officially announce and present the awardees for the Top 10 Community Awards in 2021.
Before we hand out the winning list, I just wanted to share that this year, the West Ventura County Business Alliance will be hosting the 54th Top 10 Community Awards on Friday, November the 5th. It will be held at Sarah Center and will be presented by Montecito Bank and Trust. And I'd like to take this time to cordially invite all of you and the Camarillo community to attend this distinguished event. More information can be found at the website wvcba.org.
And I believe we do have some awardees in the audience tonight, and I would like to now, without further ado, present our list of top 10 Community Award recipients.
We usually do that up here, so will you join me over there? It's working? So are you listing them?
I thought you were going to read them. My
Oh,
apologies.
I will read them. Top 10 Community Award winners. Business of the Year, Livingston Memorial Visiting Nurse Association. Educator of the Year, Maria Ballesteros Sola. Entrepreneur of the Year. Stand up. Let's give her a hand. Entrepreneur of the Year, Lillian Bruce. Public Servant of the Year, Karen Schur. Senior of the Year, Robert Kelly. Service Organization of the Year, Camarillo Wings Association. Volunteer of the Year, Ward Friedrich. Youth of the Year, Naomi Zhang. Man of the Year, Tim Sprinkles. Woman of the Year, Felicia Schoenwald. And this is embarrassing. Stan Daly Lifetime Achievement Award, Charlotte Craven.
Congratulations, Mayor Craven. I personally can't think of a more deserving person for you to receive that prestigious award. And quoting some of your colleagues, I have to say that not only are you a trailblazer, you're a legend, and you're, just wonderful. So thank you for all the service years that you've provided to the city of Camarillo. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And that will be on November 5th in the evening at 6 o'clock at Padre Serra, I believe. And tickets are available, I was going to say from the Chamber, but from the West Ventura County Business Alliance. Okay. Thank you. Next is the consent calendar.
I'll move the approval of consent.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Kildee, second by Mr. Tremblay. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. We have a presentation. Did I go down too far? Okay. We have a presentation on homelessness by Tara Caruth. And the mic is on, just make sure it's pulled down to where your mouth is, so we can hear you clearly.
Good evening, Mayor Craven, council members, city staff, and the Camarillo community. My name is Tara Caruth, and I am the program director for the Ventura County Continuum of Care and work out of the county executive office. Thank you to Commander Tennyson for the invitation to speak with you this evening on the state of homelessness in the county. I will share with you some of our regional efforts, priorities of the continuum of care, data and system gaps, and some upcoming funding opportunities. In 2018, the Ventura County Continuum of Care, with input from our regional stakeholders and service providers, established the Ventura County Plan to Prevent and End Homelessness. This is available on the Ventura County Continuum of Care website at venturacoc.org. The core components of this plan are highlighted on this slide and are focused on developing a homeless response system that is effective and quickly moves persons into permanent housing. We'll be working to update this plan within the next 6 months with all of our regional partners to develop measurable goals and objectives as part of this plan and a condition of some state funding opportunities. Communities that achieve locally established goals, such as reductions in the number of unsheltered homeless people, will be awarded bonus funding from the state to fund interventions that work. We've been working with the city, through the city managers group and the continuum of care and various stakeholders to collaborate around unsheltered homelessness. Unsheltered homelessness is a growing community challenge in California and across Ventura County. Without adequate placements, our service providers are lacking the tools to assist persons from moving from unsheltered locations. We continue to focus on increasing social service outreach, collaboration with our law enforcement partners, and expanding emergency shelter capacity. But the resources vary throughout the county. Housing First is an evidence-based practice with strong demonstration of effectiveness. Helping an individual or family access safe placement while wrapping services around them to meet their needs is the best practice to engage people productively in services. Unsheltered people are currently in crisis and sometimes struggle to keep appointments, follow through with services, and engage in productive progress. Our local programs use this model and approach and have demonstrated a housing retention rate of greater than 96% when people are permanently housed. The annual homeless count is typically held on the last week of January. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is a snapshot of one day of homelessness, both sheltered and unsheltered persons. The count was skipped in 2021 because of the COVID pandemic. We leveraged community volunteers and didn't want to risk their safety or the safety of unsheltered homeless people. Our count data has been significantly trending upwards in the last few years. Aside from this one day of snapshot of homelessness, we also evaluate system-wide data in our homeless management information system, which is a client-level database used by all of our community providers. In the most recent year's data, 2021 to current, in our coordinated entry system and HMIS, there were 243 persons who accessed the service system identifying homeless and as a Camarillo connected community member. 204 persons who were at risk of homelessness were identified from Camarillo. When we look at our emergency shelter capacity across the county, we did do our sheltered homeless count in 2021. Anyone who was in emergency shelters, including domestic violence shelters, and anyone in transitional housing programs. And you can see we had almost a 50% increase from 2020 to 2021. And a lot of this is related to the state's initiative, Project Room Key, which many of you may have heard me on elected officials' briefing calls sharing about the progress of that program. It was for high-risk homeless individuals who are over the age of 65 or had serious health conditions. You can see that in Camarillo, we had 4 people placed in 2020 and 13 people placed in shelter programs in 2021. However, I would let you know that because of the locations of the motels in which we are using for Project Room Key, people from across the county were counted in the Ventura, Oxnard, and Thousand Oaks programs because that's where they were sheltered on the night of the count. So who is homeless in Ventura County? In 2020, there were 2,336 persons in our homeless management information system that were currently homeless. This doesn't count the people that we are supporting in various housing programs. 10% of them identified as veterans, 20% of adults reported experiencing domestic violence, and 52% of adults reported a disabling condition. This slide is quite busy, so I apologize, but this is a flyer of all of the service providers that serve as a point of entry into our coordinated entry system. This system uses our homeless management information system, a common assessment and screening tool, and can determine what programs people are eligible for and make direct referrals between service providers. 211 is also a point of entry for those service connections. This gives you an idea of the type of services that were provided in the last county fiscal year. Emergency shelter being one of the largest, with over 1,000 instances or 1,000 persons accessing emergency shelter programs, followed by street outreach. Services only really focuses on day service locations where people come in for showers and mail and other services. Rapid rehousing is short to medium term rental assistance and services, primarily targeted at families, but some at adults and young people. And then permanent housing is a smaller number, primarily due to the lack of available housing in our community. There was also less homelessness prevention provided, primarily, I believe, because of the eviction moratorium and the state and federal resources. You can see that despite the growing needs, we are making progress in housing people, especially in the orange bars. You can see there's a column for single adults, families, and then total persons. In 2020, despite the pandemic, our service providers continued to connect people to housing resources. And in 2021, we have hit kind of a plateau, but we have some new resources coming online that we hope will help increase that number. And the picture you see on this slide is a group of volunteers, primarily based out of Ventura, an interfaith group, that really helped us fill in some gaps in our service system. Many of our programs can't provide for furnishings or household goods, and when they were starting to do spring cleaning during the pandemic, they got a storage unit and started collecting things and connected with our service system. And so this group of volunteers, every time someone moves into an apartment, they're bringing, they're outfitting their full apartments. It's really very heartwarming. To help you understand where we have some lack of housing resources, so permanent supportive housing is intended for the population that we call chronically homeless, who are long-term homeless and have a verified disability. The blue bar shows what we have utilized. So the project-based units would be, apartments like mini mansions provides, where there are services and the actual apartments. And then the mainstream vouchers, tenant-based permanent supportive housing, and VASH vouchers are actually rental assistance, and you have to find an available unit that will accept that voucher. And so you'll see that we have some vouchers that are unutilized, specifically VASH vouchers that are for veterans, and that's primarily due to the market constraints and the high cost of rental housing in our community. We do also have some other good news. There is a lot of housing in the pipeline that will certainly be a great assistance to our housing challenges in Ventura County. There are 17 pending, and these are across the county, and it varies from day to day. So last I knew, 17 pending developments with over 1,000 affordable units, and then 12 pending developments with supportive housing of over 280 supportive housing units, which would certainly help some of our homeless population. The challenge is a little bit of patience, right? It takes time for these projects to be financed and approved and then built, so we're expecting occupancy over the next several years. The funding opportunities that we have in Ventura County are pretty significant. There are some federal funding opportunities. I'm currently working on our annual Continuum of Care application. We're also receiving some Home America Rescue Plan funding, which I know Camarillo is part of our home consortium and partnership around those funding opportunities. That is specifically for building and operating affordable and supportive housing. more emergency housing vouchers for at-risk and homeless individuals, and then the state funding opportunities, which are very significant right now. The Homeless Housing and Assistance Program, which I mentioned, we have some activities around measurable goals for that funding opportunity. And then there are going to be some new competitive grants, Encampment Resolution Challenge Grant and a Family Homelessness Challenge Grant to help resolve homeless encampments and also to help end family homelessness. And then Project Home Key, we've had a couple of successful projects in Ventura County, but this is, sort of once in a lifetime opportunity for motel or other sort of non-residential conversion into residential uses. So that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Any questions?
Have a comment when it's appropriate.
No questions? Okay, Mr. Kildee.
Really making some great progress on a very, challenging issue that we all face. As far as the count, can you shed a little bit light on that count? Do you think that from year to year, do you think that they most likely existed but were not counted, or do you think they're somewhat new, or is it a hybrid of both of those?
It's truly, I think, both of those things. So some is, people within the community, primarily because we don't really allow for people to sort of establish a place unsheltered and remain there long term because of community and safety concerns. People do move around a bit. And so I think one thing is the methodology. It's one day, right? A snapshot of one day of homelessness. So we try to canvass and start early in the morning before people start moving. We do ask the question about how many people are newly homeless in the last year. And over the last 2 years, that's been about 30% of the people that we've surveyed. So we are seeing an increase into the system and then not as many people exiting the system into housing.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Mulchay.
Can you talk about what do we do in aiding people to get out of these programs as well? For those who don't have a disability and they are able-bodied, they're able to go and work, maybe for whatever reason, there's a multitude of reasons why they fell into homelessness. For the ones that we can help give them a job, try to get them back on their feet, and reestablish connection to stable housing. What do we do? How are we going about helping them do that?
That's a great question. And so we are even doing some of that work with people that have disabilities, but for the population who has lost a job or has fallen on hard times, we're working with the Workforce Development Board and Employment Services and continue to do some more work to have stronger connections between the homeless service system and those, educational and workforce training programs to start connecting people to employment. I think one of the challenges I have seen both from my time doing direct service and in this work is that people need a stable place to be in order to be successful and maintain that job, right? We've tried to help people that are unsheltered find employment, and it's a risk to ask an employer to take that chance on somebody if they don't even have a shelter bed. So we have seen, even in Project Room Key with some of the seniors and disabled population, that people started working when they had a place where they could shower every day and go to work. And so we're absolutely focused on that. Increasing people's income and employment opportunities is one of the performance measures that we look at with our service system.
Sorry, one additional, you talked about challenges. What do you see as being the top 3 biggest challenges for that are not enabling this program to see even greater success?
Yeah, I really think one of the things that we've been looking at is we are struggling, we don't have a balanced rehousing system. So we are creating more shelter resources and not creating at the same rate new housing opportunities, right? So we're at a place right now where the national best practice is that you have 5 housing resources for every shelter bed so that your shelters can move people through quickly. And that doesn't mean 5 dedicated housing units. That could be rental assistance, that could be a voucher, and for some people that is a more supportive housing environment. But what we have in Ventura County right now is about 1-to-1. And so we're seeing people stay in emergency shelters for a year or longer before they can find a housing opportunity. And for the hardest to serve clients, that sometimes makes them lose faith that we can help them, and then we see them leave emergency shelter programs and go back out onto the streets. And so building trust that we have the tools to help people, I think, is something that is a great challenge. And then, moving quickly for housing opportunities is certainly a big challenge, both with funding hurdles and, local processes for approval. And we understand all of those things, but it doesn't meet the need right now. And then rental housing, keeps going up. It's just rising and rising, and it gets out of reach for even people who are working. You're welcome.
Susan?
I think this is really informative, and I really appreciate you coming out. There might not be one answer to this question, but for some of the projects where we're looking for more long-term shelter and there's been funding, does some of that funding support wraparound services for those? Because, it just kind of, I'm not finding my words right now, but it's related to what Sean just talked about, how do you get those services to the people and that need them the most?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a variety of
Just make sure you talk right into the mic.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. There are a variety of funding sources and actually growing funding opportunities for services, including for the first time, we're seeing that Medi-Cal is going to start paying for some even housing support and navigation services. But we are working closely with our behavioral health system, with healthcare services, with employment services, with the family support system. And so just trying to make all those connections a reality, both in shelter programs and housing programs and through outreach and other resources.
I'm glad to hear that. It's a really necessary part of that sheltering and getting what people need brought to them and accessible to them. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really informative.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is oral communications, informational items, including committee reports, which do not require action to be reported by staff and council members. Mr. City Manager.
No comments at this time, Mayor.
Mr. City Attorney.
I have no items tonight.
Okay. Let's start with Mrs. Santangelo.
Okay, for meetings attended, September 9th, the Airport Authority, September 15th, Special Council meeting, September 15th, CPA Executive Committee, September 28th, Investment Committee, and I was in Sacramento for League of Cities, along with the rest of you, from September 21st to the 24th. And I'm just going to add on my regular reminder to get vaccinated. Boosters are now available for those who have received Pfizer. Wear your masks, and I've heard some commenting on social media, which I probably shouldn't pay much attention to, but there have been some comments about people in town standing up to to business owners who are requiring masks. And I'm just going to ask our community to be kind and don't shoot the messenger. They're following regulations, and they're trying to keep our community safe and their business safe. So I would just ask for all of us to be patient and respectful of those things. So, and that's all I have.
Mr. Mulchay?
All right. I've been rather busy. It's like we're getting back into the swing of things here a little bit as things open up. Meetings attended Thursday, September 9th, Airport Authority meeting with Ms. Santangelo. Thursday, September 16th, Economic Development Collaborative. Friday, September 17th, Economic Development and Land Use Committee with Mr. Kildee. Monday, September 20th, Utilities Committee with Mr. Tremblay. September 22nd through 24th, I was in Sacramento with League of Cities with all of you. Attended several different seminars, kind of give an idea to the public, those who are watching. Some of the things I attended, topic-wise: homelessness, wildlife prevention, infrastructure resiliency, some financial and economic outlooks, and zero-emission vehicles, and the transition both the state and localities are trying to make in achieving that over the next 20 or 10 some odd years to 2035. Then Saturday, this last Saturday, September 25th, I attended the Relay for Life out at Oxnard High School. This year they combined the Relay for Life, the communities of Camario, Oxnard, and Port Hueneme, kind of consolidated it. Just with COVID, it's easier than trying to run 3 simultaneous events. So that was really great. And then in the PM on Saturday, I attended the Camarillo Library, as Mandy had mentioned earlier, the One City, One Book event, where I got to introduce author Kate Quinn. She wrote The Rose Code. So for those of you who have not read The Rose Code, by all means, go read it. She writes some really terrific books. It's about really empowering women. As she put it, she writes books about badass women, and I thought that was pretty cool. She is wickedly smart. She does a lot of research, really extensive, in-depth research when researching her books. Her last few were in historical fiction, largely around like World War II. That's what the Rose Code is set in. So, really interesting. Sunday, September 26th, I was at the Channel Islands Harbor at the Oxnard EV Showcase. It's National Drive Electric Week. And got to look at a whole bunch of different electric vehicles from Tesla, BMW, Audi. There was an electric school bus, and just got to have, and some traditional cars that were converted to electric. Some guys, people in the garage wanting to convert, and got to have conversations with a lot of them, and that was really cool. So, and that's it.
Okay, Mr. Tremblay?
Thank you. So for meetings attended, September 9th, Ventura County Transportation Commission, an ad hoc committee meeting. On September 10th, Ventura County Transportation Commission board meeting. On September 15th, we had our special meeting here, City Council. On September 20, with Mr. Mulchay, the Utilities Committee, we talked about organic waste recycling, which is something that's going to be coming to us soon. I also, the same day, had Ventura County Transportation Commission ad hoc committee meeting. We're in the process of recruiting for a new executive director because Mr. Kettle left to become executive director of Metrolink. So that's what's going on at VCTC. September 22nd to 24th, League of California Cities Conference. While I was at the conference, I had a September 22 meeting of the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency that I participated in remotely. Also participated remotely on September 24th, yet another VCTC board meeting, a special board meeting. And then on September 27th with the mayor, we had a policy committee, and among other things, we talked about OPEB and pension trust policies. Just very quickly, at the League of Cities conference, I attended several seminars, including those in, actually I thought Ms. Caruth did a great job. One of them was on policy and legal considerations for serving the unsheltered, state and federal economic outlook, improving public safety through innovation. And I will say on that one that it was a very good presentation by the city of Glendale. I want to say Burbank, but I believe it was Glendale. And I will say, sitting through that, and they have their own municipal police department, and we're a little different because we contract with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, but sitting through that, I will say that all of the innovations that they were going through, Ventura County Sheriff's Department is already doing them and has already been doing them. So it was a really nice feeling to sit there and know that we were ahead of that curve. And then finally, a seminar on California drought and our drought issues and whether or not we can conserve our way out of the drought, which is a great public policy question. Anyway, that's my report.
Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. September 15th, the special council meeting. September 16th, VRSD. September 17th, the Economic Development Land Use Committee. September 28th, Investment Committee. I also attended the League of California Cities, and it was very interesting up there, and what I took away from that is we need some rain. I haven't been up in Sacramento in probably 2.5 years, and it is really dry up there since the last time I've been up there. So anyhow, if anybody can do a little dance or get your little rain wand out or anything you can do, that would be really beneficial to all of us. So it was a good conference, always very informative, and several of my colleagues here have spoken about it. So always enjoy going there, and I always learn a lot. So that's my report.
Okay, I've got a little bit longer report this time. I attended the California Contract Cities Annual Conference, and it's a little different than the League. They just have one schedule that looks like this. Also fine print, you have to put on your reading glasses. But it went for 2 days, and everybody attends all of the same thing, is why it's a different format. Some of the speakers were very, very interesting. There was one on working from home that I found particularly interesting. I also attended the League conference in Sacramento last week, and I have to say, I think the League people who put out the programs are really good at devising titles. I think that sometimes the programs don't deliver. That's been my long-term feeling about the League. And they delivered in exactly the way I expected them to. I also attended the Policy Committee meeting, on Monday, the special council meeting, and also the Contract City State Legislative Committee meeting today. I want to get back to being in Sacramento. As I walked around, I noticed there was block after block of restaurants closed. Sometimes it was a whole block, everything in it closed, both sides of the street. And I was just amazed. So I want to put a shout out to our staff for reaching out to our businesses, jumping on it the minute we heard all these restrictions. We reached out to our businesses, and I believe it was because we were offering, we as a city council, and helping them get the federal money, revising relaxing our ordinances in some ways for the emergency. I think we really helped a lot of our businesses stay open. And I just want to tell our staff, I think they did an excellent job. As I was walking down the streets in Sacramento, I just thought, oh my, this is terrible. Of course, we didn't have a state capitol where nobody was working and nobody came to visit, which was the way that those restaurants were supported, but it was a real shame. I wish I could read my own writing. Okay. As we all know, SB 9 and SB 10 were passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And I think that's a real shame, and that's a way that this city has lost local control. We've lost local control over land use. And as I was searching around for a different piece of information last week, I found something that surprised me. I didn't even remember I had. Don't have any recollection of receiving this, which is kind of surprising to me. But apparently in 1998, we had a problem with something called HR, House of Representatives 1534, that had passed the federal legislature. And this is a letter I received from President Bill Clinton. I had apparently written to him, I was mayor that year too, written him asking him to not sign the bill. And he said, as you note, H.R. 1534 would prohibit federal courts from deferring to state courts on certain issues of state law, sending premature lawsuits to already overcrowded federal courts. And then he assured me that he shared my views and would not sign the bill. So, we've been fighting this local control for a long time, and after I'm gone, you're going to continue fighting this local control bill for a long time. Don't ever let your guard down. And even though it might seem hopeless, continue to write letters. We wrote letter after letter of protest for these bills. And it isn't necessarily what they're trying to do, it's the manner in which they're trying to do it. And as I've said time after time, these bills do not guarantee low-income housing. They guarantee more housing, but where it's been built, the rents haven't gone down because the bills did not contain none of the units that people can build with only ministerial approval have to be designated for low incomes. So I don't think they're going to accomplish what they thought they were going to accomplish, or maybe they were saying they were going to accomplish something they didn't. I've gone on about this too long, but I am really upset about these two bills having been approved and signed. I will let you know that well, there was several bills that we have been supporting, and I didn't make my notes correctly. Several of them were approved, were signed by the governor either yesterday or last night. We will be getting those lists, I know. But I do want to point out that SB 619 passed, and last night was signed by the governor, and it is the one that delays SB 1383 requirements for kitchen waste, for food waste, by 1 year. And the last thing I want to say is, as soon as I read in the paper that I could register for my COVID booster shot, I went online, tried to find a place in Camarillo, and I got the very first appointment available that I could find in Camarillo, which is October 8th. So a lot of people in Camarillo are planning to get those booster shots. And that first one I found, I will say, was at Ralph's by Mr. Kildee's store. Okay, so with that, I believe our early session has concluded, and we will recess until 7 p.m. Okay, thank you. We will recess to close session, but we will be back at 7 p.m. for a public hearing and public comments. Public on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak to the? Yes. I have some comment cards. If there's anybody else who would like to speak to us, please fill out a blue card in the back and hand it over to the city clerk, and we will call you in the order that I have received them. First one is Keith Salvas. I'll remind each member of the public as he's coming up that each person has 3 minutes. You can see a clock up here that counts down. When it gets to 1 minute remaining, you will see a yellow there'll be a tone, and then there'll be a yellow light, and then we ask you to finish up in that minute. It's not fair if I let some people go on for a long time, and then other people have stop out of respect for our regulations. So, and at the end of the 3 minutes, that little thing at the base there under your feet, it just opens up and you just fall down right into the ground. Okay, Mr. Salvas.
I'm Keith Salvas. Thank you for taking me tonight. Earlier tonight, Tara spoke about the services for the homeless in Ventura County. Excellent presentation. She mentioned rising rents are a challenge for her, and I'm here to give you an address. I was here at the last city council meeting to propose rental caps, something that I think is lacking, and I'd like to give you an update on my activities so far. I did contact all of you, as I had promised, by email. Mayor Craven, thank you for your response. It was automated, but it was a response. I really do appreciate it. So, where are we right now? I have successfully initiated the paperwork to get the Rent Review Mitigation Commission instituted to review my rental increase. And when that comes through, when the meeting is scheduled, I will invite all of you. Please, I would like you to attend. The problem is that that will help only me and my fellow tenants. I see a bigger problem here. I see a bigger problem in that when the state wanted to help out San Francisco in an overheated rental economy, they revised or created California Civil Code 1947.12, limiting rental increases to the change in the CPI plus 5% over a 12-month period. That's 8.6% to me. That's a lot. And I can see this going out of control. What happened is, it seems that now the invitation is open for everybody to increase their rent to the maximum. The problem is that the way it's written, it uses the CPI, which only measures increases, and it doesn't account for earning power. So I'm going to talk to Jackie Irwin to see if we can amend that a little bit. This code also mentions that you do have the ability to institute rent control to a certain degree. I'm going to look into that a little bit further. My time is running short. I have my revised courses of action. I've got a copy for each of you. If it looks like I'm figuring this out as I go, I am. And also I've included a few articles from newspapers where I've been in the paper doing this kind of thing over the last 20 years. I don't go out looking for these things, but when they come to me, I don't refuse them. This is something that I will follow through with. I will come back to you the next city council meeting to give you another update, but I'd like to partnership with you where I can and see if we can get rent control caps here and lead the state, if Camarillo can lead the state in rent control. Thank you.
Perfect timing again. Next speaker is Jerry Barnett.
My name is Jerry Barnett, and we submitted a letter to the City Council earlier this week. Apologize for adding to your reading load when you have the housing element. We have received several calls from the city staff about some of our concerns, and multiple calls from Mr. Dave Moe. He requested that we make these comments in the public comment section of this meeting rather than with the housing element, as we did with the Planning Commission. We are seeking to learn who it was that prevented us as residents from purchasing the Camarillo Mobile Home Park over the last 14 years. So our understanding that was prevented based on needing the infrastructure maintenance up to date. Now a new owner owns the park, and the infrastructure is decades behind maintenance. And it appears that these agencies that kept us from purchasing the park kind of faded into the background. So just let you know a little bit of what we are trying to do. We're trying to find out who prevented us from purchasing the park and who is not coming up to the plate with the new owner to get the infrastructure maintenance up to date. One resident in a recent meeting suggested that the new owner really wants to use the land for apartments. That would probably give the city more housing than a mobile home park. There is a legal path for that in the California Civil Code. It's our understanding, or our impression at this point, that the landlord is intent on not following legal paths. We submitted a set of questions to the landlord 2 weeks ago. We have not received any answers. Most of those questions relate to the Civil Code of California. We do know that the landlord has been coercing residents to sign documents backdated months ago in order to appear, evidently, to be following the law. Regarding our request for the city, we ask that you add a short sentence to the Housing Resource Guide, and I mentioned that. Modify the rent review mediation ordinance to conform to the city, or to the state law, and then consider that we meet the criteria for a sensitive community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Betsy Artuso.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Betsy Artuso, and I'm here to comment on the Camarillo Area Transit bus pass price increases. Our Mayor Craven stated that the City of Camarillo residents have had a great deal with our public transportation service, and to that I'd like to say yes. It's been bragging rights for me for over 8 years, and to people who ask me, I tell them I do not drive, and I have access to our bus for $25 a month. It has been a pride and a bragging right for me. I truly believe that affordable public transportation is the good and right thing for our community. Just like curb cuts, the bumps on street corners, and handicap parking, affordable access to public transportation is right and good for our community. Also, it contributes to the safety and wellness of our residents. Second, to tell me that I can purchase a monthly bus pass through the county or state, that's not the answer. To go through red tape to get a monthly bus pass, that's not right. Although I appreciate that resource, I've been coming to City Hall for almost a decade to purchase my bus pass, and let's see where, to purchase my bus passes. And I think that, the buck should stop here at City Hall. The money should come straight to Camarillo. Last thing, the city of Santa Paula has a 31-day super bus pass, and it serves the residents city of Santa Paula, Fillmore, and Piru. It offers dial-a-ride and fixed routes. For ADA, it's $25, and seniors, $25, and for general public, it's $30. But Camarillo wants to keep up with Ventura, Oxnard, and Thousand Oaks bus fares. No, Camarillo is not Ventura, Oxnard, or Thousand Oaks. Camarillo is the best city in the world, but we will be the best city as soon as we get this bus pass thing figured out. I am asking that this council readdress the bus pass price. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address us on an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward, we will go on, and I will ask Mr. Tremblay to call the Camarillo Sanitary District Board back to order.
All right, we're going to reconvene this meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District. Move to the 7 o'clock item for a public hearing on the ground lease with the Mike Brucker Ranch. May I have the staff report on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair and Directors. California Public Health and Safety Code provides for sanitary districts to acquire real property and lease unused property as a means of providing revenues to the district. A public hearing is required to consider actions regarding a lease of district property. In 1996, the Camarillo Sanitary District entered into a ground lease agreement with Mike Brucker Ranch for a long-term lease of the CSD-owned 50-acre agricultural parcel located on Howard Road, east of Poncho Road, next to the wastewater treatment plant, as shown on the map. The lease has been extended several times with adjustments to the lease amount per the agreement based on the Consumer Price Index. The current lease expires on September 30, 2021, with a final year lease amount of approximately $87,300. Mike Brucker Ranch has requested a 2-year extension of the lease with the option for 3 additional 1-year extensions for a total possible lease term of 5 years. Mike Brucker Ranch will use the parcel for a 2-year crop and is aware that CSD is investigating possible options for future alternative uses for the parcel, which may affect the lease term beyond the initial 2 years. That's the reason for the additional 3 1-year extensions if the district can accommodate that. The annual lease amount will start at $89,000 with annual CPI adjustments for future years. Staff recommends a third amendment to the ground lease agreement with Mike Brucker Ranch for a 2-year extension with the option for 3 additional 1-year extensions for an annual amount of $89,000 beginning October 1st, 2021, with annual CPI adjustments for successive years. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Klotzel. Do members of the board have questions for Mr. Klotzel regarding this matter? Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, Klotzel, so does the leasee pay for all of the maintenance, all of the upkeep, all of the water, all of the insurance on that parcel? And is he using the parcel in totality now? I believe it's 50 acres. And do you know what crops that he's growing on there at this particular point?
I don't know the exact crop type. It is something that, like I mentioned, it's a 2-year type of a crop. But I don't have the details on exactly what's being planted or out there now. The typical use is the entire parcel, and it's for that cost of lease amount, the annual lease amount, and then any other additional costs are the responsibility of the leasee.
Do you know if he's using our reclaimed water for his crops, or do you know that?
I want to say yes, he is. I don't know that for an absolute fact, though. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So this is a 3-year lease agreement, is that right?
The initial term will be 2 years
2 years with one potential extension.
with potential for 3 one-year extensions.
Okay.
What we'll do is lock it in for 2 years and then have the option based on where, if things remain as they are now with no intended use in the near future, it could possibly be extended for additional 1-year increments. And we would be coming back to the board for those extensions also.
And what kind of a leasee would you say that he's been over the years?
Long-term, and it's worked out really well.
That's all I have.
Other questions from board members? I have a question, Mr. Klotzel. I want to focus on the lease amendment itself, and it's on Section 1 of Agreement 1996-12C, and it's the one you just referred to, and it indicates, and I'm going to paraphrase, that the lessee may extend the ground lease annually for up to 3 years beyond the amended term. And so in other words, we have a 2-year base term with 3 one-year options. But the option to extend is with the lessee, correct? Provided that 2 conditions are met. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
So if, for example, we were to get to year 3 and we were unable to agree with the lessee on the amount of the base rent, then the property would revert to the district as the property owner, correct?
Correct, yeah. As far as owner goes, we'll always own the property. It's just under a lease agreement.
Right, no, I know that, but what I'm saying is even though the extension, even though it may be the lessee who wants to, I won't say unilaterally, want to extend into an additional 1-year term, there still has to be an agreement at that time as to what the base rent is going to be, right?
Correct.
And the second condition is that the lessee has to give notice to the district 90 days prior to the end of the amended term, right?
Correct.
So there are those protections for each of the 3 one-year periods succeeding the initial 2-year base term, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be sure, because when I read the amended language, I wanted to be sure that I was reading it correctly. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and convene the public hearing on this matter. I'll call the public hearing in order. Are there any comments from the public or anyone who wishes to testify in the public hearing as to this specific matter? Hearing none, we will, I'm sorry, Jeffrey, have we received any comments at all? Okay. All right, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the district board, what is your pleasure?
I'll recommend that staff approval of this.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Kildee, a second by Director Craven in this instance. Please vote. And that item is adopted unanimously. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting of the Sanitary District Board of Directors.
Okay. The City Council will then hold a public hearing on the final draft 2021-2029 Housing Element Update and Negative Declaration. Could we have a staff report, please?
Oh, here we go. Good evening. My name is Joe Power. I'm with Rincon Consultants. I'm here with Greg Martin, who's the project manager for this assignment. We've obviously been assisting the city with the preparation of the housing element over these past several months, and hopefully tonight we will bring this thing to closure and get it off to HCD for certification and have this all done. So I want to just go over a few items. First, just as some background. State housing laws, I think all of you know, mandates that all jurisdictions periodically update their housing elements. In this case, it's every 8 years, so that the 2013 to 2021 element expires this October 15th, which is the statutory deadline to adopt the new housing element, which is why we're here tonight. Now, the city undertook an environmental review per the California Environmental Quality Act. Of the housing element, of course, prepared an initial study and negative declaration, ISND. That document found that all potential environmental impacts of the project could be reduced to a less than significant level, or would be less than significant without any requirements for mitigation. That ISND was made available for public review and comment, along with a notice of intent to adopt the ND from July 23rd to August 22nd of this year. The city received 2 public comments, one from the Watershed Protection District, just noting that residential development must comply with district regulations, and one from the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, indicating that no further consultation was required for the housing element. Now, the city has undertaken a number of public outreach efforts over the course of this process. I won't go through all of them. You can see it's a combination of public workshops, city council meetings, planning commission and city council joint meetings, plus some public hearings, the latest being the planning commission public hearing on August 31st, where they recommended approval of the element. The document also went to the State Department of Housing and Community Development for review. That happened from May to July of this year. On July 13th, the city and the consultant team, that's Greg and me and Veronica Tam, had a call with HCD to discuss their comments on the housing element update. And on July 27th, HCD submitted its formal comments on the draft element that we have responded to. So the HCD findings letter addresses many of the statutory, says that the element addresses most of the statutory requirements, but did require some additional analysis and some program revisions. Each of these HCD recommendations and the revisions are included in detail in the agenda report, and you also have a red line version of the draft housing element showing the changes that have been made since May of this year. And now I'm going to go through some of those revisions. For 3 of the programs that were identified in the housing element, HCD requested some revised time frames. First for program 13, which is about seeking grant funding to support affordable housing. They requested that the notices of funding availability be addressed annually as they become available. For program 15, regarding review of housing policies for internal consistency, they requested a revised time frame to make that occur within 3 years of the housing element adoption. And then for the homeless strategic plan identified in program 17, they requested a 4-year time frame to get that done. For 5 programs, there was added information. First is for program 2 related to affordable housing bonus points. With the passage of SB 8 that happened very recently, this suspends the residential development control system through 2030, so the city does not have the ability to implement that program over the course of this housing element cycle. It's something that may be revisited in the next cycle. For program 3, accessory dwelling units, that was revised to specify how the city will promote ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and commit to amending that ADU ordinance to address the HCD comments. This will remove the requirement for homeowners to annually certify occupancy of either the primary dwelling or the junior ADU. This is all in compliance with government code requirements. For program 4, fair housing practices, that was revised to reflect affirmatively furthering fair housing analysis and meaningful actions included in Appendix C, again, per government code requirements. And program 10, adequate sites, this was revised to commit to monitoring the land inventory to ensure no net loss of units if a residential project is approved below the allowable density on that site and is included in the land inventory. Staff is not anticipating any adequate capacity issues because the land inventory demonstrates that there is actually a surplus of units available based on the housing sites inventory. Program 16 was revised to commit to review and analysis of the city's single room occupancy, SRO regulations, and to work further with HCD in the future if any revisions are needed. Now, there were a few required new programs as well. Program 18, city-initiated affordable housing projects. This program would commit the city to process 2 city-initiated affordable housing projects. You can see there at the Berry Street former stock lumber site and at the Arneal Road mixed-use site in order to count them as low-income sites in the land inventory. Program 19, this is to promote energy conservation, and this just commits the city to distribute information on energy conservation through a variety of media. Program 20, Affordable Housing Preservation. This commits the city to contacting local nonprofit housing agencies, as you can see there, to assess their interest in acquiring and managing at-risk properties and to support applications for financing programs such as low-income housing tax credits. Program 21, by right affordable housing projects. This one commits the city to developing a program to allow by right approval of residential projects on 2 vacant sites at Village at the Park and 14 non-vacant sites at the Camarillo Commons that include 20% or more of the units affordable to lower income households. They can include additional units, but that 20% is the minimum. This does certainly, the developer still can request concessions and waivers of development standards through the city's density bonus ordinance under this program. Now, we took this to the Planning Commission on August 31st. They received a presentation by Rincon and opened the public hearing. There were 2 written comments and 1 verbal comment. The written comment from the House Farm Workers suggested the city's public hearing notices should include both English and Spanish, and requested some other minor revisions. Staff included the comment in the record and is reviewing the public noticing procedure at this time. They also suggested the city should consider future revisions to the inclusionary housing policy, and the city will focus on increasing its effectiveness in creating housing opportunities. Again, that was included in the record, and the city will consider that when it considers future revisions to the inclusionary housing policy. Written comment 2 was from the residents of Camario Mobile Home Estates. They provide information on their neighborhood, raised health and safety concerns regarding sewage backup and aging infrastructure. Again, this letter was included in the record, responded in the public hearing that the issues are site-specific, and staff will continue to work with the community to help to address the concerns raised. Then there was verbal comment 1. This was from a representative of the residents of Camario Mobile Home Estates. They just reiterated the issues outlined in their written comment number 2 that I just described. Now, the Planning Commission discussed the element and the ND and asked a few clarifying questions and commented on the thoroughness and completeness of the document. I think it's important to remember this document is fully compliant with state law. It's also more than meets the city's RENA with a surplus, so we think it is very much in compliance with all the applicable requirements, and the Planning Commission agreed with that. Chairman Talmadge did request that the ND should include a brief discussion on the desalter plant as an additional water source, and discuss that the city's water conservation measures are enforced to address drought conditions. The ND was revised accordingly. The Commission did not request any revisions to the final draft housing element. So the Planning Commission's recommendation, when all was said and done, was on a 5-0 unanimous vote to recommend council approval of the ND and the 2021 to 2029 housing element update. Now, again, that statutory deadline is October 15th. That's why we're here tonight, trying to get this done before that deadline. That would retain the 8-year housing element cycle. If we didn't make that for some reason, the city would have to go to a 4-year cycle, so we'd really like to avoid that. There may be other potential consequences, including the loss of various state grant funding if we don't meet that deadline. Now here, again, compliance with state law. I think this is really important, the most important thing here. It is absolutely consistent with state law. We've been through HCD, incorporated their suggested revisions, so we think it is fully compliant with their requirements and the requirements of state law, and as I mentioned previously, it provides sufficient land to meet the RHNA, including a surplus at each of the income categories, as you can see there. Next steps, after tonight's meeting, staff will work with the consultant team, that's Greg and me and the rest of the team, to incorporate any public or council comments we get tonight into the final element, and then that would be submitted to HCD again for a 90-day review for final review, I'd say sort of a verification review for compliance with state housing law. Once they certify that the housing element complies with state housing law, the new element will be complete. So the staff recommendation for tonight is to adopt a resolution adopting the negative declaration 2021-9 and adopt another resolution adopting the 2021 to 2029 housing element update. I believe that is it, and Greg and I and the city staff are here to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions? Mr. Kildee?
So we spent countless staff hours on this. We've had public workshops. We've had, I believe, a survey that's went out. We have had our planning commission review this. The pleasure of being here the last time that we got our housing element actually up to the state on time, and if I recall right, I believe Mrs. Craven can correct me if I'm wrong, we were one of the first, if not the first one in the county to get ours approved, not only up there on time, but also approved, and obviously that's the goal. So the question is there anything in this that you can think that ought to be in here that is not? Because obviously the goal is not only to get it up there on time, but to get approval.
I certainly do not. I'll let city staff chime in as well, but we think we have responded to all of HCD comments. I think we got relatively few comments, and I think we generally got a positive review the first time through, and I think we have responded to everything they've requested, and I anticipate that it will be pretty smooth sailing going through HCD for that 90-day time frame. Now, we will have about a month to respond to any final clarifying comments they may have, but we think that'll be plenty of time to accomplish that.
So I concur. We feel it's complete and meets state law and meets the local guidelines that we've set forth with city council policies for housing as well.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Any other questions? Ms. Santangelo?
Hi. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody that had a part in this because it's comprehensive, and I think that the responses to the comments from HCD were incorporated well. I just wanted to talk about the at-risk units. I don't know if you all want to go to the page I'm on. I guess, so the page,
Which
the electronic page, I guess. I'm on page 75-ish. Let's see, the table starts on 73. And this is just a table of the affordable units that the covenant will be expiring. And there was a discussion about, it looks like there's 3 that will be expiring during this housing element. And so I was interested in that because I was trying to look at how we can be proactive in trying to keep those units affordable. And I guess my question is that with so much going on in the state with all of these housing bills and all these ways to squeeze more units in, have they given any thought, or is there any funding, or have you heard anything about any funding that would help cities extend these covenants or repurchase these units that will be going, that will be expiring. And I guess the reason I'm asking as well is because, the great thing about the housing element is helps us look at the next 8 years, but on page 74, I looked at how many will be expiring in the next housing element.
So
And
we
sorry,
do, yeah, we did adopt a program as part of the housing element that we would collaborate with our local nonprofits to see if they can assist with the acquisition and preservation of the at-risk units. And we would look for grant funding. We don't know of any particular funding, and we don't anticipate that the city itself will try to acquire those units. That's for rental units. We do have a program and a city council policy and a lot of foresight on the part of the city council in addressing the risk of loss of ownership units, and we've been trying to purchase 1 to 2 units a year with CDBG funds, and we have a really good policy that you've all established on that. But it's much more challenging for the rental units because the cost of those projects are significantly larger, especially if they have the potential to convert to market rate.
And so I know this would be looking at the next housing element, but if I look at 2032 to 2036, I added it up. That's that could be the loss of 210 units within a 4-year period. And again, I know that's not this element, but the beauty of having this knowledge right in front of us is that we can start to be proactive now. So I just think that's worth noting and kind of flagging and putting on our radar now.
We definitely agree. That's a concern staff has. One thing to note is that we've already increased the term of our affordable rental covenants to 55 years, where some of these are older properties, and you could see most of them are between the 20 to 30 range in terms of the timelines. So fortunately, the last couple years, we've had extended the term to 55, so at least some of the more current affordable units will have a longer lifespan.
That helps.
Could I just ask on that specific thing? And then if they're repurchased, that triggers it starting all over again.
For sale units are reset.
For sale units.
That's correct.
Let's see. I had a comment about, well, I'll save comments then.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's all I have. Question.
Anybody, Mr. Tremblay?
Madam Mayor, I have some comments later, but a question now for either Mr. Vach or Mr. Powers. So earlier in the meeting, we discussed briefly, the mayor touched on the newly chaptered SB 9. So my question to you is this: what impact, if any, will the newly chaptered SB 9 have on this adopted housing element update and its requirements?
We don't know yet. We know that we try to utilize our accessory dwelling unit ordinance to count the units that we're seeing come online now with the updates in our ordinance as helping to meet RENA, and we did incorporate some of that, but it's too early for us to tell, quite honestly, if and when we could ever utilize SB 9 regulations to try to help meet RENA.
Well, let me reframe the question. Is there any language at all in SB 9 that speaks to a housing element update such as this?
Not that I'm aware of.
So wouldn't it be fair to assume then, for purposes of this newly chaptered legislation that the governor just signed, that I'm going to have a lot of comments about later, so that these two are entirely segregable? In other words, there would be no credit for housing units that would be developed under SB 9. There would be no credit given toward this housing element. Is that a fair assumption to make?
Yes.
At this point?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, no questions from the council. This is a public hearing. I don't have any cards. I don't know if the city clerk has any cards. But I will open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone who would like to speak to us on this specific item. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the council for comments. Yes, Mr. Tremblay.
Well, if my colleagues will bear with me for a minute. First of all, I want to say that I'm very supportive of this housing element, and I really want to compliment Mr. Power, Mr. Martin, Mr. Vaca on a job very well done. And, you know, it's nothing, what's really instructive are the PowerPoint slides showing the public process that the city and its consultants went through in engaging the community and coming to this housing element update. And I really want to compliment you because it represents literally thousands of hours of work for the city to do this at a not insignificant amount of money to come up with this and to comply. And as you noted in your presentation, Mr. Power, I mean, it more than meets our RENA requirements. It is fully compliant with state law, so I'm really appreciative of your efforts. That said, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about the newly chaptered SB 9. That's the elephant in the room. As I sit here, how ironic is it that we sit here and to hopefully adopt this housing element update, and we have SB 9 that was just signed by the governor a couple of days after I think it was a couple days after the recall election, where 241 cities were opposed to that legislation. And if there's somebody out there who's not familiar with what SB 9 does, it requires all cities, regardless of existing circumstances, to ministerially approve. That means no discretion, no control, a housing development containing up to 4 units on a lot otherwise designated for one single-family residence. It requires cities to ministerially, if you want to reframe it, it requires cities to ministerially approve an urban lot split, thus creating 2 independent lots that may be sold separately. The city has no discretion, no control over that. It's just going to happen. It's just going to happen. I'm a proponent of infill development. I think this housing element update is well constructed. But SB 9, sitting in, it's almost like a contradiction to this. It is terrible legislation. Some people have said it's an assault on local control. It's not an assault on local control. It's homicide of local control. And my ire is not pointed toward HCD. It's pointed toward a very small group of legislators that sought to impose their will on millions of Californians who, in reliance, have purchased their single-family residences. And you have cities that go through this incredible exercise in terms of community engagement and cost, and all of a sudden you have this top-down, crammed-down legislation. And Mr. Vaca, you indicated yourself, there's nothing in that legislation that even speaks to this. So while I'm really happy that and this is a great effort, I just think why have a housing element? I mean, that legislation that was just signed by the governor, in essence, makes a mockery of this entire process and makes a mockery of the community engagement and the costs that went into doing this. Like I said, it's a homicide of local control. There's no guarantee of affordable housing. It's going to result in higher density and much more density in terms of parking and infrastructure issues. And I think it's just really ill-advised. And I recognize that we're talking about the housing element update, but again, I can't help sitting here thinking about that legislation coming down, being crammed down the throats of all the cities in this state, yet at the same time we're going through this process, a very elaborate process with a lot of community engagement. And it's too bad. It's just a really unfortunate situation. That said, and thank you for indulging me in some comments. That said, I really want to compliment you. This process was done right. This process was done with community engagement. It wasn't done in a crammed down back room in Sacramento by a couple of legislators. this was done the right way and speaks really well of this city, so I'll be very happy to support it. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Comment.
Mr. Kildee?
I agree with what Councilmember Tremblay has said. I want to commend the staff. We have a long history in this city of doing things right, getting public engagement, following the law, making sure that we just don't send something up to Sacramento that's inconclusive. We want to get it approved, which my hope is that this one will as well. I think Mr. Vaca and his staff and the consultants, I want to personally thank you for all the hard work, and the constituents that are out there. As was said, it's countless hours, a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of going back and forth. It takes months to get these approved, and we take this seriously in this city. So, as was said, I'd be happy to vote affirmatively on this as well.
Ms. Santangelo, you said earlier that you had some comments.
You're going to hold me to them. I want to thank, well, first of all, I share the concern about, that Mr. Tremblay's brought up about the infringement on our local control. I understand, I think, the purpose or the goal of what these laws are, but I think it's hard from where we sit, from in a city who is doing, I think, a good job at infill, and so I think it's hard for us who feels like we're doing our part to have state law imposed upon us, and that's frustrating. So I share in those feelings. I want to thank the staff. Like I said before, I was really impressed at the responses to HCD's comments. I mean, one of the things that, just as an example, on page 161, this new table that you guys created with the issues and the factors and then the actions that we've taken, I just think it's a really great summation of what we do here in Camarillo. So I want to thank everybody that had a part in the housing element. And to the council and to future councils, I hope that we use this as a chance to, look really far ahead, because things take a long time. Housing takes a long time, and then boom, all of a sudden, 4 years, 8 years has passed. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to continue doing what we can for housing, and to continue to make sure when we can that the developments and the housing in our town reflect the character and the community of this place that we all care about so deeply. So those are my comments, but thank you for your efforts.
Mr. Molche.
I'll try not to add anything more than what everyone else has already said, other than this has been a very rigorous process. I really appreciate the amount of input at so many different levels. I do want to remind the public, because we get these questions all the time in regards to this, that we are not requiring necessarily, we're not requiring the development where we have to prove to the state. The state has these imposed RENA numbers that we have to meet, that we have to show the adequate land inventory in order to meet those state mandated RENA numbers. And that's what we're doing here. It is ultimately on private developers to bring projects to us to develop. So whether it is on the land specified here or other, that's for them to propose. But it's really on private interests to ultimately pursue development if they so choose. So that's it. I do really appreciate this, though. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to add a little bit more. I already talked about my frustrations with SB 9, or some of them. I think some of what Mr. Tremblay and Ms. Santangelo have talked about add to my frustration. in that one of the goals of the city of Camarillo for many years, and I think I was the first one in town to start talking about housing for families with low income and children. And I used to be out there and come and talk to the council members, and a woman named Jean Scott and I even pushed, and after a second try, got an Article 34 referendum passed, so the city could participate in low-income housing, as it was called then, and as I still call it, although there are a lot of fancy names for it now. One of the things that the Camarillo City Council decided at that time, and it's been a part of a program or something in the general plan since then, has been that our housing was not going to all be located in one area. The housing for families with low income would be spread throughout town. And I think Camarillo's done a very good job of that. I keep telling people, I could put you in my car and drive you around town, and I challenge you to tell me which unit, where is the low income. We've got one little block of very old housing and another block of moderately old housing. Other than that, it's very hard to identify. And I, for one, have always been proud of that, and I think the people of Camarillo, many of whom don't know where the housing is, are also proud of it. And I think SB 9 is going to make it so that that goal is gone. When you can start putting so many units, having so many without parking requirements on one lot that was meant for a single-family home, I think we're going to lose a lot of what made people like Camarillo, but the whole state's going to have that. So this morning I was thinking, how many people are going to leave because of this kind of stuff? You know, we already got people leaving because of requirements on businesses. I just don't know. I just can't tell you how frustrated I am with those two bills, SB 9, SB 10, and also some that passed last year. But the other comment I wanted to make is, looking back, I believe that Camino Ruiz was our very first rental complex that had a time requirement for lower rents. And we put I think it was a 15-year requirement on that. And we thought, man, that's a long time. And you know, that went by like this. It was like a flash in the pan. And then we had some for sale housing. The next that came along was on Walker Street. And those houses, I forget how many there were. We thought, well, the 15 years is going by pretty fast, so we're going to put a 20-year requirement on resale. And that went by very fast. And the only thing I can say about that is, the only one of those units that sold in the 20 years was when a man died and his son bought the unit. And, but still, it went by very quickly. And we extended it, but I think that Joe found the way to do it when he put up, and I know some of this isn't what's in the housing element, I'm just explaining my concerns for answering you on how to keep some of this in. When it's sold, the for sale ones, when they're sold, then that triggers in the 35 years starts again. And that does help. It goes up with the cost of living, but we're never going to keep things at 30-year-old prices. That wouldn't be fair to the person who bought it. And the other thing I want to say is, as far as Ponderosa Village goes, it's always in our housing element as something that is at risk because it could not go again with the Section 8 program. But when Mr. Levine bought it, I wasn't on the council. I just happened to be out there for a different reason listening. He promised the council that he would always keep it in Section 8 housing. He passed away, and I called his family right away after that, And I said, what are you going to do? And the family told me that as long as they owned it, they would keep it in the Section 8 program. This is, 52 units, 54 units of senior housing with one manager's unit. And it's our first one, and I think it still has been kept up, and it's very nice place. They have a long waiting list. It's not operated by the Housing Authority. So I'll just kind of let it go at that. My frustration is with yours, that what we have, and I, for 35 years, have worked for so long to make sure that we had housing for families with low income, or as much as we could get, and that it was going to be compatible with all the rest of the city. And then to have people in Sacramento who are from San Francisco develop so much power that they can come in and tell us we can't do that, I think is a travesty. So, does anybody else have any comments? Okay, what are the wishes of the council? Yes?
I'd like to go ahead and, hopefully with city attorney's concurrence, I'd like to move both staff recommendations, which are adopting the negative declaration and adopting the 2021-2029 housing element update. Can I motion both at the same time?
My advice is that you do them separately.
Okay. I'll move to adopt a resolution adopting the negative declaration 2021-9.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Mrs. Santangelo got the second in first, so there's a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously.
And then, Madam Mayor, again, with thanks to staff and our consultants for a terrific job, a motion to adopt a resolution adopting the 2021-2029 housing element update.
I'll second that motion then.
Okay, Mr. Kildee, second. Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, that being the end of the business we have.